Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are the Owatonna School Board. It is Monday. It's the 22nd of February, 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Eric is going to give us our attendance.
All 7 school board and our student rep are present.
Fantastic. If we could all rise and join together in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up tonight would be to approve the agenda as it has been presented to you. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the agenda? Hearing none. All in favor with an aye? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. I'm going to turn things over to our superintendent, Mr. Elstad, for our mission moment.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, members of the board. Tonight is my honor and privilege. I'm going to ask Dr. Tom Maher to step into the boardroom, if you would, please. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. Have a seat right over here. You get to be on the hot seat. Yeah, well, and pull it closer to the table, if you would, Tom. Thank you. Okay. It is my honor and privilege tonight to lift up Dr. Tom Maher for our mission moment. After I read that, this quote just gives me goosebumps because this is exactly how Tom Maher lives his life as a professional educator. School is about trust and love. And once your students trust that you believe they're doing the best they can, they'll love what they're learning in your class. I think Dr. Maher exemplifies many of our 4 core elements to our district. Certainly 21st century learning and the experience that our students get based upon all of the curriculum that Dr. Maher has prepared and all of the things that he has done to just really take a deep dive with our students into how things work. And not as the scientist that he is, to really start to help our students understand that science is something that is unique and that's something that we invest our thinking around. And I think about the thousands of students that you've had an impact on, Tom. It's just unfathomable. I share one quick anecdote because I had the privilege of working with Dr. Maher at Owatonna High School when I served in the capacity as an assistant principal there. There was one particular day that Mr. Maher called me to his classroom. Now, in general, when assistant principals get called to a classroom, it's generally because maybe there's a student having an issue and they want a little help with that student. As I came into his classroom, there were 32 students with their faces pressed to the window looking out just underneath his science classroom that faced kind of the football field area. And the students, and Mr. Maher was like a little kid because there was a hawk that had killed a squirrel or a chipmunk or a mouse or something. What was it? A pigeon, thank you. Yeah. And it was kind of dissecting that as we speak. And it became the most relevant thing that morning to see. And I was just, the excitement that Dr. Maher shared with his students and the excitement that they had for it was just unbelievable. And it was fun. You're irreplaceable, Tom. And I would tell you that you truly exemplify the work we do in Owatonna Public Schools and the work that we want to continue to do. To provide our youngest educators that knowledge and skill base that you provide them in all of the trainings you've been doing for our staff. I can't say enough great things, but this month, members of the board, I wanted to lift up Dr. Maher for his many, many contributions that he's given us so far and those that he will continue to give us just to enrich our community and certainly our school community as we move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to add very quickly that when 5 years ago when we did the enhancements to several of the elementaries as well as the middle school, created the middle school, there is outdoor learning space that came about just by the sheer doggedness and stick-to-itiveness that Dr. Maher had with regarding contacting every organization under the sun that has anything to do with the outdoors and learning outdoors. And there's a fabulous walking path and outdoor space that all came about because of your hard work. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And of course, your parting prize is the very coveted #Owatonna Proud t-shirt.
All right.
All right.
Do we get to give him a round of applause?
We should.
Yeah, either way.
I'll go this way. I see the open door.
Right.
Run to the door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
We're going to move on. I'm going to just check with Mr. Elstead one more time. There's no public forum for tonight.
There is no public forum tonight. Thank you.
As we move on, reports tonight, I'm going to turn things back over to Mr. Elstead for some introductions. The first being student nutrition update.
Thank you. And so at this point, I'm going to ask Sarah Brooks and Chrissy McIntyre, our student nutrition leadership staff, to come into the boardroom and look at that. Right on cue, here they come. While they're being seated, if we reflect back on the last year, and I would go even pre-COVID, the work that these two young professionals did for our district in really organizing a student nutrition system, and now add to that a pandemic that requires us to feed students regardless of their status with school from the ages of 1 to 18. These two individuals deserve extra praise and adoration for all of the work that they've done to really make this come to life, because hungry kids can't learn. And so I think they entered their work, and I remember working specifically with Sarah and saying, Sarah, what are your barriers? And she just kind of said, we will take those out of the way and we'll make this work. And it seems like every time I come to you, Sarah or Chrissy, I usually hear the same response. We're going to make this work. So thank you for all your work. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to them so they can share a nutrition services update for the board.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction, Jeff. My name is Sarah Brooks. I'm the Director of Nutrition Services here at Owatonna Public Schools. Sorry.
And Chrissy McIntyre, I'm the nutrition coordinator here.
Just one of the other things that we learned to overadapt with, masks on and off. So, well, first I wanted to thank you to the school board members for letting us do what we do here in nutrition services and always being a point of support for us, and also having us here to share the amazing work that we've been able to do. So just a little department overview. Within Owatonna Public Schools, we operate 7 self-operated kitchens. And by that I mean within each of our 7 schools, all of our kitchens prepare and cook their own food at that site. So the meals the students are receiving are actually made there in-house and stored at the site. So we also have 40 team members, as well as our amazing substitutes that help us out when needed. And they've definitely come in great help this year. And then in addition to that, our program operates under the United States Department of Agriculture, or the USDA. In addition to the USDA, we also are overseen by the Minnesota Department of Education. Those two agencies set rules and regulations that we have to follow when serving meals that also apply during a pandemic. Within that, we serve our National School Lunch Program and our School Breakfast Program during a typical school year that we'd be going into right now. And then during our summer program, we operate under the Summer Food Service Program. So this is all typical school year. We'll go into what COVID-19 looks like. But first, our philosophy has maintained the same throughout this pandemic. We are here to serve high-quality meals to our students while meeting nutritional requirements and being there to serve our customers meals that they actually want to eat. There is no such thing as a healthy garbage can, and we're still trying to maintain that throughout this entire pandemic. So our goals this year look a little bit different than they have in the past. First and foremost, we wanted to maintain the health and safety of our customers as well as our staff. So that's adjusted a little bit on how we do our practices for serving, but we're still able to maintain that. Food access has been an issue for families even before COVID, but with the pandemic, we've seen an increase in our unemployment rates as well as students not being in person. With that comes less food access. So this is something we've been working to address to increase our food access for our families that are most in need. With customer service and when serving food, it's of the utmost importance that we are serving our family members and our students with great customer service and addressing inequities that we see within our department. And lastly, as Jeff mentioned, we went through everything under the sun just like every other department when COVID-19 hit, and we could not have done that without collaboration within our district. So I'm very, very Owatonna proud to have said that we worked with many different departments as well as external organizations to serve what we did in the spring. And we're continuing to work with our departments. So it's been a great, great pleasure to work with them. Sorry about that. So I mentioned a little bit about during a normal school year, we operate under the National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. When COVID hit and became very prominent in March of last year, the USDA and the Minnesota Department of Education worked very quickly to allow us to do what we do best, and that's feed kids. They put a lot of waivers and flexibilities in place in order for the paperwork to catch up and do what we do, is just feed kids. Well, when these waivers were in place, we had them through the remainder of the summer, which we did serve our summer food service program like we always have. Then we received guidance in the fall that said we'd be switching back to our normal program, which is the school lunch and breakfast program. With that program, families do have to pay for meals if they do not qualify for free or reduced price meals. Thankfully, on August 30th, in 2020, USDA provided an extension that allowed us to switch back to our summer food service program, which we were able to do in the spring. That program allows us to feed any child ages 18 or under a meal at no cost to them. So we were able to maintain that through December 30th, at which point they further extended that to the rest of the school year. So that's where we're at right now, with free meals being available to students under 18 through the remainder of the 2021 school year. So we are very grateful for that. In addition to that extension and waiver, there has been about 80 other extensions and waivers that the USDA and the Minnesota Department of Education that have allowed us to do what we do. I listed some of them here just to kind of get an understanding that there are a lot of waivers in place that make what we're doing possible this year that we wouldn't be able to do without.
Sarah, I have a quick question. So right now, we're in the process as a district of applying for approval to provide an online learning opportunity next year. Would this food service department still provide meals, do you envision, to online learners? Or is it too early to know that, or to know if it's going to work similar to how you guys are doing it now, if someone opts to do all online learning?
That's a great question. So right now, these waivers would allow us to do so. However, they are all set to expire, at least in majority of them, on June 30th.
Okay.
At that point, we have no guarantee if these waivers would continue, and we would not technically be able to offer meals beyond that deadline to students that are not in person receiving those meals.
Okay.
However, we have seen so many things change, and I never say never at this point, so it's possible that waivers may be continued, especially knowing that all districts are seeing similar things.
Okay.
And USDA may need to adapt their practices if needed. So at this point, I don't have an answer. If waivers aren't extended and no additional information is given, then at this point, sadly, no.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a great question, though.
I too have a question. What is that SFSP?
Great question. The Summer Food Service Program.
Okay.
It gets very tongue twister if I had to do the acronyms every time. Everybody does acronyms. So just getting a little bit more information about our department right now from a numbers perspective. This year we did see a 2% decrease in our free or reduced percentage as far as our applications go. That is likely due, we believe, to many families not actually submitting an application for educational benefits because meals are free. So we think that is the reason for that. However, there could be other things that play into that. Additionally, we also saw a decrease in our average daily participation as far as meals go for breakfast and lunch. We did expect this. When students aren't in person, they typically aren't eating with us, and we just don't see them showing up at our pickup locations as much, so we expected that. We saw the biggest decrease in our 612 sites because our students are only in person 2 days a week. This is just looking at the true counts for meals served. We did see significant decreases in the number of breakfast and lunches served between September through January of this year compared to last year. But I did want to point out that while these are dramatic numbers, they were again expected, and we're still very amazed that we were able to serve as many meals as we did, knowing that many districts were not able to have students in person, and we were thankfully able to do so in a safe manner while still being able to serve students.
Sarah, I just have a quick question if I could. So do those figures reflect both the meals that you served like in parking lots, that kind of went out and were distributed, as well as meals in the buildings, right?
Great question. So these numbers are only reflective of essentially the start of the school year in September. The meals that we served last year in parking lots in different areas, those would have been part of last year's data. So this is only meals that have been served in a combination of our distance learners, our meal pickups, our hybrid students, as well as our students that are attending in person. So that is all of our different meal distribution methods in one.
Right, so the meal pickup just happened at the school?
Yes,
building.
this
Got it.
year.
So it was still kind of, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So looking a little bit more into how we're actually serving students, as this is the major impact that we saw change in our program. Our normal way of distributing meals is in person. They're coming through our serving lines. This year, we're serving not only in our cafeterias like always, we're serving in our classrooms as well as in other spaces as needed to allow for social distancing. For our students under the hybrid learning model, we are offering them 2 days per week in person, breakfast and lunch. And then on their last in-person day, we offer a to-go meal bundle that they can pick up before they leave for their school day. And that has 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches to get them through their distance learning days. So that way we're still able to feed them 5 days per week. For our distance learners, as well as for our community members that have children ages 1 to 18, we offer a distance pickup. This is at our McKinley middle and high school locations, and this is 2 days per week, which allows us to again capture all 5 days for these family members. Lastly, in December, we were able to start our home delivery back up with the help of our Owatonna bus company, and this was a great benefit for our families who are unable to access our pickup locations, which we know is a barrier for some families. I can tell you all these things, but sometimes it's just easier to actually get to see what this looks like. On our upper left picture, this is a picture of our Lincoln Elementary. Our head cook is delivering our kindergarten lunch meals. Our kindergartners had a hard time carrying meals from the cafeteria to their classroom, so this was one way we kind of navigated that with in-person delivery. In the upper middle picture there, we have how we manage social distancing. We put folding tables in place to allow our students to still maintain social distancing from our cashier and are able to self-service a single milk item, so that way we're not having students touch multiple things. In the lower corner is our creative way to try to manage where all of this food is going, in our walk-in coolers and freezers where we're available to. So it definitely adds up. And then on the photo on the right is what we are doing at our middle school, as well as our high school and McKinley Elementary, of distance learning pickup. So we have meals on carts, and we do a cart transfer, so that way we're still maintaining social distancing with our families. Next, this is looking at what our students actually see. So this is what an elementary or a high school or a middle school might be seeing their food be presented to them. In the upper left-hand corner is a picture of food on a tray. We are still serving food on trays for our 6-12 students that are in person. We are using compostable trays right now compared to our reusable ones, but we hope to transition back within this next school year. So they're still eating foods, and we're able to still serve in a bulk format, which you see on the bottom picture. So we're still trying to reduce plastic waste where we can. The main difference is our nutrition services team is serving these students, so that way we're not having contact points of students touching the same item. In the upper middle picture, this is what our elementary breakfast might look like. We did serve breakfast in the classroom, and we have for many years. However, now we are bundling everything together so that students do not have to touch multiple items. They just receive one bag of food with option of milk. And then the last picture is our student favorite day, which is orange chicken. We're still serving our favorites to these students, and we're happy that we were able to maintain it. We just have to do it in a little bit different format. So instead of food on a tray, we're serving it in a 3-compartment container that students can walk back to their classroom.
Nice. Sarah, will you talk a little bit about the compostable versus the reusable tray? Why the transition and why switch back?
Absolutely. So right now we are focusing on compostable trays, which we have access to. The main reason being all of these different methods that we've had to transition to have required increased staffing, and has resulted in us not being able to always have staffing to wash all of these reusable trays that we have on hand. if we are able to, we try, but in order to preserve staffing, and I know it's very hard for them right now, and I want them to be able to make it through this pandemic hole, just trying to prioritize where we can cut certain staff labor needs to be able to package all of the individual items. We just don't have the staffing to do so at this time. But next year, we hope to return to that, as we know it does have an environmental impact. And we choose to do compostable for that reason. Great question.
Thank you.
Next, I wanted to highlight specifically our to-go meals, the meals that are leaving our sites. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because these are meals that would not have been able to be provided without all the waivers that are currently in place right now. All of these meals would have potentially been missed if that were not the case. Additionally, I wanted to thank our nutrition services team for being very flexible in serving meals, because we do not traditionally provide meals to go, and that was a learning curve, and I greatly appreciate it for not only the nutrition services team, but every department that's helped us make that possible, including, again, the Owatonna Bus Company, who's been willing to transport the meals for us and reach our families who aren't able to come to us. So this is what's actually going into our distance learning bags. For example, the top two pictures are what one days of meals might look like. For instance, a cold option like a sandwich, or this month we started doing more reheatable entrees that are student favorites, such as boneless chicken wings with mashed potatoes and gravy. And they were very happy to see that come back, and we were thrilled to be able to come up with safe practices to be able to offer these. Additionally, the picture on the bottom right is what 3 days of breakfast and lunch meals look like, as well as the milk that goes with them. It adds up. We know that students can sometimes be picky with what they like, so we hope to capture as many student likes and favorites as we can, and are really fortunate to be able to help struggling parents that it gets hard to feed students 2 times a day, every day. So we're here to help them, and are very fortunate that we have family members who want to participate in our program. We don't get to do what we do without participation, and we hope that we see a continued participation and more participation. In fact, we want people to come eat with us. It's not just for families that are in need, quote unquote, it's for everybody. The pandemic has been hard, and we're here to help feed these students who would have otherwise been in our school every day.
And I'll go over some program highlights from this year. So with each of the different ways that we're serving students, we've created customized menus to match each of the different learning models so that our families and students know what to expect for breakfast and lunch. For the most part, the elementary schools didn't have a lot of change from a traditional menu, but where the customization really came into play was for our hybrid and our distance learning meals, since those are being bundled together. So the changes that we made to the menus were done in a way that we could communicate when these distant bundles meals were going to be handed out, how many meals were in each of those bundles, and then also demonstrating what each of those components in that bag, since it's all jumbled together, what that day that's intended to be eaten on. We've also been able to add a few new menu items this year. Considering that we've had to go to a lot of distance bundle meals, we wanted to incorporate more cold and shelf-stable meals so that those meals could have a longer or bigger window for when we handed them out to when they're still food safe and they can still eat them. So we had power packs, which were all cold entrees. We incorporated hummus into our menus, which we used as a protein or as another vegetable item. And we added some new items that were also brand new to the market. So like our cheesy pull-aparts is something that's new that we were able to start incorporating this month. In addition to all together new products, we did some plays on old recipes. So our loaded tachos is a play off of our loaded baked potato bar, because we can't actually have a baked potato bar. We made that into something that was going to be able to fit into those trays. And then in addition, we had some menu items that we didn't typically serve at the lower levels. So one would be the breakfast sandwich. That was something that we served for breakfast at the higher levels, so 6 through 12. We added that to the lunch menus for our students. special dietary accommodations, we've still been able to accommodate students with special dietary needs. This year we have 19 students. We've provided accommodations regardless of the learning model. So we've been able to work with parents and make sure that all those dietary needs are met for every student. And then just something new this year, we traditionally had a server-based back of house system. This year we started transitioning to a cloud-based system. So this allowed us to kind of fine tune our processes and make sure that we had the most accurate information. It was also very helpful to have this year, considering that the server base, you had to be on campus. But having this new cloud-based system, it allowed us still to make sure that our orders were placed, despite if we weren't able to be here every single day.
So again, we just wanted to thank you very much for having us here today. Does anybody have any additional questions?
I do. So I saw that teacher bringing trays, big carts of food to the elementary rooms. Did you have to purchase any additional equipment in order to transport some of this?
Great question. So that was actually one of our head cooks who was able to work it into her schedule to do that. We have not had to purchase any major equipment to do this new process. However, we did start implementing a sealing system, which allows us to put food into essentially what looks like freezer meal trays, but they are food that we are cooking in-house and putting in, and then sealing with a film. It allows for a more compact storage, as well as the potential to freeze those and put in our distance learning bag. So we did have to rent the equipment to use those, as well as pay for the new supplies to be able to operate that as well. We did purchase some cooler bags that we utilized last spring and are continuing to utilize this year. So when we're serving meals that are going to be handed out and will be out for an extended period of time, we're still able to maintain food safety while insulating the food.
And one other question. So now that you're not getting any income coming back in for the rest of the school year, do you know what type of financial impact that's going to be with those graduating seniors? Do you have a lot of funds that you're going to have to return back to the families?
We have had since last spring families who have requested to have their funds in their meal accounts reimbursed, and every school year once our seniors get closer and closer to graduating, we do assess where their meal balances are at, and if it's a positive balance, we let families know, would you like a refund, would you like to transfer it to a sibling, or would you like to donate it to our Husky Angel Fund, which is a fund we have available to help pay for costs of families who have negative balances and are unable to cover those costs. If there's a negative balance, we do work with the families to try to collect that negative impact wherever possible.
And just thank you. I couldn't imagine having to cook for that many people with that many different likes. I mean, I struggle with myself. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We don't always get winners, but we try to choose the kid favorites because we know it's been a rough year for them, and we want to be here to provide their favorite meals as much as possible. So that's what we've strived to do.
I wish they would have had orange chicken when I was in school.
During a normal school year, their school board members are always welcome to come and eat with us and see what our students are eating.
I will be.
Yeah, I just have to say, I'm amazed at the organization. I mean, the detail, like you said, the customization, it's really astounding to watch. So congratulations to both of you and your whole staff. And I guess maybe just one overarching question. I see a number of interesting practices that you've had to adapt and implement. As you look forward, let's pretend COVID is all done and we're all kind of back in our normal classrooms doing the normal school day. Do you see anything like that comes to mind that you'll want to carry forward that you've learned this year, or any things you've learned, or meals that, I don't know, any reaction to that?
Great question. My biggest hope from this is to really, from a higher legislative level, to really show the importance of what universal or free meals can really benefit for students, whether they qualify for free or reduced meals. So I'm hopeful that whether that be at the state or federal level, we may see a continuation of school meals being provided for free for students. But again, that's just a wish that I've always had, as I think it's a great option. However, within our own Owatonna Public Schools, we have had a couple elementary principals as well as our team members notice that some of our elementary students are eating better in the classroom. It is a less
Wondered about
loud
that.
environment and for some students, not for all of them, but they have noticed that students may be eating more of their meal and are a little bit calmer when they're eating in a classroom setting versus a cafeteria. So that could be something that some principals may want to look at continuing doing, either for certain grade levels or certain subset of classrooms, that we'd be happy to work with them. As again, our ultimate goal is that students actually eat the food we're serving because they enjoy it, and give them the opportunity to socialize still.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Elstad?
Oh, I could probably echo the comments that have been made in my introduction of you as well. You know, we go back to, thinking about the 4 commitments that we've made in a safe and caring environment includes that our students are well fed and that our students are learning because of that. And so I just can't thank you enough for the flexibility and understanding that you've had, but mostly for your creativity and innovation around how do we make this work and really just removing barriers all the time. I look at some of the photographs. Thank you, by the way, for sharing that, because I think it's important for not only board members but community members to see the innovation that's gone into how do we make this work to make sure that our kids are being fed. So well done. Thank you.
Sarah, Chrissy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great presentation. We're going to move on to item B, which is the legislative update. Mr. Elstad is going to do a little bit of introducing here. We've got some virtual components to this as well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so our next item on the agenda is really an update from our legislative liaison / lobbyist. Schools for Equity in Education is, I don't see, is Brad not there, quite there yet? Okay. Let's see, I know that there he is, right there. And through technology, we have Brad Lundell joining us this evening. Welcome, Brad. Just a quick introduction. Brad, are you able to hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Let me give you a quick introduction. Brad Lundell has served as the Executive Director for Schools for Equity in Education for a number of years. And Brad, I'm not going to tell him how many years. That's up to you to tell him that story. But Brad has been advocating and helping us legislate in the Owatonna Public Schools. And again, the membership of Schools for Equity in Education is a group of districts that work together because we have something we call property poor districts, meaning that the districts we have don't have the large capital investments like some of the larger cities do. And what that means is that we put more pressure on a lot of our property owners that are just homeowners within our school district. Schools for Equity in Education is an advocacy group that really looks to try to equalize that, and you probably have seen a lot around, equalizing debt service and equalizing the operating levies because they're trying to make it so that where the address of where students reside, regardless of the city you're in, the kids get the same access to quality education and the resources needed to do that. So, Brad, with that introduction, I will turn this over to you.
Yeah, it's you're all there in person, and I wish I were there in person as well. They missed me at the Medford McDonald's.
That's right.
No, it's great to be with you, and however we can do it. And I want to commend all of you for. These have been really tough times, and again, you've been on the front lines of doing some very, very challenging decisions, and it's not easy. And I think that you need to, I commend all of you because, again, I always say to the federal government's at the 30,000 foot level, the state government flies a little bit lower, say at 15,000 feet. You guys are right on the ground, and you've got to make the decisions and the tough decisions that needed to be made last spring, and the tough decisions that have continued to be made, had to be made. That seems to be easing up a little bit, but that doesn't mean that there won't be more tough decisions as we move toward the end of this school year, and then hopefully everything will be everybody will be vaccinated and everything will be back to at least as normal as we can expect come next September. It's been it's been an odd legislative session in some sense because we've been doing everything as there's distance learning and now there's distance legislating. Most of the committees have been done over Zoom. The floor sessions have been done, I think, kind of hybrid, but mostly legislators are in their offices, but oftentimes they're you can follow along. You can see them when you watch their committee hearings on Zoom. You can see that they're in their offices and that they're working. It's made for very interesting. I think that last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago rather, when Jim Dabney was at our House Chair Jim Dabney was at our C meeting and talked about it used to be so much got done informally and just by instead of having to set up a Zoom meeting or the like, you could just catch somebody outside a hearing room and give them the latest and whatever they're thinking about an amendment or something like that. And it's just been a far more mechanistic system this year, so it's difficult. And I think in the end, it's probably going to lead to a legislative final legislative packages that are probably going to be a little bit slimmer than they have been over the years. I think that you'll see there will be policy coming out. The governor has a very healthy policy bill, and they also have some fairly healthy fiscal policies that they're putting forward as well. And both the House and Senate will be doing that as well. I think one of the issues that we were talking about now that I really want to share with you and kind of there's kind of 2 tracks for funding now. It's kind of a now and later. The governor's come out with his plan that both the House and governor have plans that spend about 118 million. That's what basically was lost from the pupil amounts, pupil shortfalls. That was about $118 million, I believe, that the state saved because students either homeschooled or went to private school instead of being in the public schools. I think the state has lost about, I think, between 10 and 12,000 students. And then that you calculate that out, it gets to be about $120 million. Both the House and governor are putting money back in some of that. They're not proposing to do the whole 120 million. They're spending 120 million, but as far as the attendance changes go, they've been talking about, I think the governor has 25 million, the House has about 40 million. I think what they're doing with the remainder of the dollars, I think they're kind of putting it into individual programs to kind of, I hate to call it learning loss. I think the best way to describe it is delayed learning. You can't lose anything that you didn't have. And I think the thing is that a lot of these kids, there has been probably some skills lost, but I guess the thing is to try to get students back in with the experiences they need, with the tutoring, with the extended time. The governor has some money, both the House and governor have to take money in for extended time, both for over the summer. I think the other thing in the governor's bill is there's lots of grant programs for field trips, mental health supports, a variety of other programs that they're looking at to try to get, again, students kind of back into the swing of school. Come the fall, and hopefully, again, I'm Scandinavian. I'm an old Scandinavian guy, and the thing is it's always hard for me to be optimistic. But I am optimistic that school will be back the way it should be, the way we've experienced it for so many years. Come September, and we want students to be ready to come back in. And I think that they're going to be excited, but there's some students probably are going to be, there'll be some anxiety, there'll be some stress. Again, trying to catch up with, another year without MCAs or whatever the case might be, to try to get the students ready to go, both academically and social, emotional sense. And again, you guys are on the front lines of that, and so you're seeing those needs. I guess that's why I would prefer, I've always been kind of skeptical of grant programs because that makes you guys fill out forms of paper to hopefully get some money. I would hope that in the end that the dollars, the largest portion of dollars come out to school districts so that you can figure it out what you need in terms of getting out to those summer programs, getting out to those, those students that are going to need the academic help to, get to the next grade level, to come in prepared to learn in the fall. So I guess those are the kinds of things that we're looking at with that. It's called the governor's summer bill, and the House again also has a summer bill. Then the second tier of that, or the second swing, then is the kind of biennial budget, which would be for the next school year and the school year after that. The governor's called for a 1% increase in the basic formula the first year and a 2.5% increase in the second year. House File 843 is the House file sponsored by Representative Stevenson from the Anoka-Hennepin area. He has 2% in the first year and 2% in the second year. Now, 2% in the first year and 2% in the second year is more than 1% in the first year and 2.5% in the second year. Again, it gets to be that kind of an optical illusion, but that first year at 2%, that second year is you're going off a higher base from year to year. So it's about an extra $100 million that's in House File 843 than what's in the governor's bill, which is House File 1065 and Senate File 960. The governor also has a variety of other programs. I think he wants to hold the cross subsidy, the special ed cross subsidy, hold that where it is right now, and that costs money because again special ed costs are going up faster and faster than inflation. He puts $13.6 million in for the English language learner cross subsidy. That's another cross subsidy that's kind of been flying, riding below the radar for years. But you're a district that knows you have you're growing number of students in your district that need the English language instruction, and it's a formula that's really one of the more intellectually honest formulas in the system because. The child that needs the English language instruction, the exact number of staff that you've assigned to the English language instruction, and that you map the student's progress, and when the student exits the program. But unfortunately, intellectual honesty doesn't always add up to sufficient funding. And so a lot of districts have been using our compensatory funding to backfill. And of course, you have compensatory needs as well. And so the thing is that again, if you're a district that has English language needs and not a lot of compensatory revenue, then you got to go into your general fund to augment that. And I think that it's again one of those times where we looked at one of the things that had happened last summer or last 2 years. They've been working on an education funding study, but again, I always tell people that. I can always tell when there's going to be some economic choppy waters because just see if the Minnesota Department of Education is doing a funding study because it may look like they'll have enough money to do it when they start, but there'll be economic choppy waters between the time they start and the time they finish, and they won't be able to do a lot of what they plan to do. And I think the English language learning piece and the special ed, there was big changes in the special ed formula that would have really taken a big bite out of the cross subsidy had the recommendations of that school finance working group been able to be followed through completely. But again, that's it's water under the bridge right now, or water over the dam, wherever you want your water to go. Right now, we're looking at kind of a truncated version of those recommendations. I think the other thing that's in that bill, though, that's very, very important, and it's important to see districts to a great extent, the governor's put about $90 million into equalization of current levies. A big chunk of that comes in greater equalization of the local option revenue, which is currently $725 per pupil. It's kind of a two-tiered equalization system with different factors, and I don't have a blackboard there. I don't have a blackboard to completely confuse you, so I'll just say that it's, it would be a big property tax a lot of top property tax relief throughout the state, and Owatonna certainly would be a beneficiary of that policy. Some referendum equalization as well, not as much as we would like and see, but again, it kicks up a little bit. And then that's about $10 million of the, I think it breaks down to about 60 million in local option revenue equalization, 10 million in referendum equalization, and about 20 million in debt service equalization. Owatonna is also a district that, because you just passed your bond issue a couple years ago, your community is putting forward a lot of effort, and they're taking care of some of that with the ag bond issue for the owners of agricultural property, but people without agricultural property are bearing a heavy burden, and then also don't get me wrong, the people in the farm communities the farmers are also getting hit, because as on the house garage 1 acre, they're not getting any of that ag bond credit on that. So again, they're also homeowners and business owners are getting hit. And so again, this would help mitigate that to some extent and make the property tax system more fair from across the board. The governor also has a policy bill. I should also mention that Senator Roger Chamberlain is also doing some things in equalization. He's going a little bit different approach than the governor. I think that on the C website there should be a handout from that we prepared, or that the Senate prepared, that would show, and I think again, Owatonna will be a beneficiary of that. Again, tax fairness is one of the reasons that C exists, probably was the reason. I'm not saying the only reason it exists, but I think what sets us apart from a lot of the other education organizations, that we really concentrate on the property tax angle to a much greater extent. That's our issue, is really, we believe that, the differential property wealth does lead to different levels of opportunity for students throughout the state. And we want to make sure that, and also then we shouldn't expect taxpayers in our districts to put out more effort for the same dollar as the taxpayers in school districts that have higher levels of commercial industrial property. I suppose I could have come down, I'd love to go down to Owatonna and go, count how many buildings have more than 5 stories. Probably not as many as there are in like a St. Louis Park or a Hopkins or a downtown Minneapolis. And I think that that's, again, if you look at that commercial industrial property piece, that really distorts the property tax system. I guess as we move forward, I think the one thing I would urge you to do is, contact your legislators and contact legislative leadership. It's very, very important that that summer bill get done prior to June. I think I guess I used the example the other day, I used to pour cement with my dad, and there's one thing is that I imagine everybody's doing some planning, but it's like putting up forms when you're pouring cement, that you can put up the forms, but where are you going to put the cement? How much cement do you have? And I guess the thing is, until we know how much cement's going to be there, a lot of those, putting up the forms might be a lot of work without the kinds of results that you would want at the local level. So I would urge you to contact your legislators and talk about the need to get the summer bill, whether it's the House's summer bill or the governor's summer bill, or whatever the Senate wants to do in terms of a summer bill, to have that have that passed before they tackle the budget as a whole. We'll know more on Friday. The budget the budget forecast is coming out on Friday. It looks like the revenue is going to be a little bit better. Income tax is down a little bit, but sales taxes and corporate taxes, a few other taxes, are going to be up. It depends on who you talk to. It's with economists, you never can tell. Some are still very worried about the long-term nature, if there's going to be a long-term recovery, what that looks like. But it seems that there will be a blip now, and I guess getting that, especially for the end of this fiscal year, the summer bill all the money in those summer bills come from what's expected in this current biennium. and there's a surplus for this current biennium. It's where the shortfall shows up is for the next biennium. Now, obviously, you can only spend $1 once, and every dollar that's spent in this biennium will, out of this, the end of this fiscal year, can't be moved forward. But again, this is like, also, it's almost like a fund balance. You just don't know whether or not you can build these things into the base going forward. And I think that's why capturing these dollars and using them for the shortfalls that school districts experienced due to the enrollment declines, and then also use, to the extent possible to get those dollars back, but then to also do some things again around extended learning, around student mental health supports, and other issues, field trips, whatever the case might be. Again, I would like to see these come out less as grants and more into dollars that you guys can figure out to plan your own responses. But again, I think we quibble about that as we go along. I guess the thing is that getting these things done is going to be, I think, the most important thing. And so I'd urge you all to use your megaphone to talk to your local legislators and also to legislative leadership to get that moving. I don't know what the end of session will look like. It's been an odd session, like I said. We don't know how things will play out. I know there are some legislators that want to go back to in-person legislating. I haven't been vaccinated yet, but I've got my face mask and I'm ready to go back if I have to. But I guess the thing is that I do think it's going to be a year when hopefully they'll do very few things very well, as opposed to doing a lot of things and leaving some, kind of throwing a little bit here, a little bit there, as opposed to really looking at the real engines of funding and really take those up to where they need to be. With that, I guess I can, open it up to any questions. And again, I'm glad to be with you, but I wish I were with you.
Questions from the board? Looking around.
Brad, thank you for that. And last week, you referenced the sort of summer bill. I sent a note off to Senator Jasinski as well as Representative Petersburg, Senate File 973 and House File 1064 on those items. Senator Jasinski indicated his full support. I do have a meeting actually, incidentally, this Friday morning with Representative Petersburg. He's back in district this Friday. And I'm going to be speaking to him about that as well as a couple of other bills. But last week I had the chance to testify with the House Education Finance Committee, and it was just a little bit weird to be just doing it through a distance. Didn't feel as personal, obviously, because generally you get a little better feel for how the representatives are feeling. But anyway, I thank you, Brad. If there aren't any other questions from the board.
And thank you for testifying, Jeff. I think one thing this year is that instead of doing a lot of testifying in person to this point in the legislative session, I think I've got I haven't written War and Peace yet, but I've gotten to the Cliff Notes version. I put a lot of ink on, put a lot of stuff on paper, and we did weigh in on the bill that Jeff testified on renewing referenda, because again, that is just a real headache for districts to have to. You think you're going to win the race. But it's a race you just as soon not have to run. Mm-hmm. You just say, but you have to do it. And I think the other thing is that, truth in taxation exists for a reason. And I can never figure out why the people that are complaining about this bill don't really say, well, go to truth in taxation, and, the board has to explain why they've done everything that they're doing.
Right.
And I think in some instances, I know that in the past, there have been several boards I've worked with in the past that haven't levied all they can levy. And so again, they always seem to think that boards are trying to, put one over on the public, and of course you're not. And I think that this is a real example of a way that it's just something that you shouldn't have to do every time the levy is passed. You're renewing it for the same amount. Just that should be good enough.
Brad, I think that does it for us. We didn't really have any further questions. That was a very comprehensive report. Thank you for making yourself available to us virtually.
Absolutely, and again, I'm blogging more, so check out the blog and sign up for Deb Griffith's weekly update. And again, our C materials are online from every meeting that we have. So again, pass those around and make sure that y'all get a good look at. We're a value-added organization. We want to make sure our members are getting value.
Good.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Item C tonight would be the American Indian Education agenda item. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad for some introductions here.
Thank you. We're having Michelle Krell join us tonight, our Director of Teaching and Learning. She has been working with this. We do have a small number of students and families that have identified as American Indian living within our district. And with that comes some opportunities and some ways that we need to kind of work through some of our policy and curriculum and things with some of our families. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Well, good evening. I'd like to give you just a brief report on our American Indian Education Aid. So we became eligible for American Indian Education Aid this last spring. So once you hit a threshold of 20 American Indian students or more, then you start to become eligible for this. And so we wrote the grant. The grant amount was $20,000, a fixed amount, which was $20,000. So we identified the two goal areas within our world's best workforce of closing the achievement gap and all students graduate. And so then we created some goals around those areas, specifically identifying who our American Indian students are and being able to provide some systematic support for those students to ensure graduation. So we've worked with closing the achievement gap. We've really worked on the culturally responsive teaching practices and getting all of our high school teachers trained in that. We purchased a variety of new texts that represent our American Indian students for our libraries. And then we've also made a conscious effort to think about who our American Indian students are and to encourage and try to enroll them into courses that will support the needs they might have, which could be AVID or our Rising Scholars program or our REACH program or any advanced placement or capstone kinds of courses. And then also to continue to work with our American Indian families to try to engage them within the work that we do. And then in addition to that, we really identified the counselors are working to identify who those students are and just tracking their progress, and then providing any additional support necessary for our students. And so those are the goal areas that we've identified. We're working towards that. Annually, we need to hold an American Indian Parent Advisory Council meeting. And so we did that in the end of January 26th. And part of that meeting, a requirement from the Minnesota Department of Education is that we have to hold a vote of concurrence. And so our American Indian families need to be able to report whether or not they believe that the education that they're receiving in the Owatonna Public Schools meets their expectations. And so typically we would have our American Indian Parent Advisory Chairperson here today, but she sends her regrets. Leanne Jin is our chairperson, and she would like me on behalf of her to report that the American Indian Advisory Committee has issued a vote of concurrence that they agree with the contents and implementation of the American Indian Education Program. So, and this is something that we will now, we have a form that we fill out. Mr. Elstad and Mr. Sebring will sign that. We will send that to the Minnesota Department of Education as part of the compliance that we need to have. as far as American Indian education. Any questions?
Sounds cool.
I have one quick one.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, do you have a vision, assuming the numbers stay constant, like if they drop below the threshold, then does the funding go away? Is
The
it-
funding will go away, yes. So 20 is kind of,
Yeah.
we just barely made it. We have 22
Yeah.
students. We just barely made it this year to be able to write the grant and get that funding. So every year is will be a little iffy. I don't know
Sure.
where we land for the following year, but we certainly can do some really good stuff with $20,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I guess
Yeah.
my next question, and I'll just be brief, is, depending on the age of these students, in terms of tracking, the goals and the graduation, for example, I mean, it might be, if they're a sixth grader, I mean, we have 6 years to get there, and, yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. So just to break it down, kindergarten through fifth grade, we have 11 students. Grades 6 to 8, we have 6 students, and then 9, 12, we have 5 students. So we have a total of 22 students. But we really want to make sure that, especially now, we're trying to track with their progress and any support that they need. Even, talking with parents, what do your students need? I was able to, work with a mom to get her what her child needed at the middle school for some additional math support. So really looking at individually what are the needs that they have, because we really want them to graduate and then have a plan for the future.
Questions?
I have one more. So do you know if, what our number was last year? I mean, did we get an influx of Native Americans?
It teeters right around that 19 to 22 is where it's been. Last year was the first year we hit 20, and that's how we got bumped up. I think we were probably at that 18 to 20 range for a few years prior to that. So it does fluctuate. And so a family could be identified as American Indian family if they check 2 or more races, and one of them is American Indian. So there's a few ways. And there's different federal counts and state counts. We learned that. And so, we've learned a lot through the whole process.
Great. And thank you very much. Every time you talk, I learn something new. So thank you for all of you.
There's always a lot going on in the school district.
Michelle, I was wondering, what type of goals do you set that would be different from the overall goals of all students?
I think that so what we did was we actually took our achievement and integration goals that we had set, and then we just tailored them to fit our American Indian students. So many of these are the same goals. Some of the things we were able to buy, the text and things like that with the dollars. But I think all students graduate. It's much easier to track 22 students and really have some targeted interventions for 22 students that are American Indian versus, 5,000. So, that's kind of the difference probably. And this kind of gives us a heightened view of who those students truly are. So.
No, thank you, Michelle, for this work. I mean, regardless if there are 22 students or 2 students or 2,022, the efforts that you're making with achievement and integration and trying to find unique ways to serve our students, be respectful of their backgrounds and experiences, where they can start to see themselves in the text we provide, things like that. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle, thanks. Hey, Michelle, we're just a couple of items away from the administrative report. Do you think you'll be around for just a little while longer?
Yep, I will.
Do you mind coming back?
No, I'd be happy to.
Perfect, thanks. We're going to move on to item 7 tonight, which would just be the general information. The first one is the enrollment report. Another month of being able to look at the enrollment report and not see any of the red cells, which is a great thing to see.
One comment, if I might, Mr. Sebring, is that, you see our enrollment has, kind of wavered. It used to be pretty close to right around 5,000. We're down to 4,923, I think today was our number. That is highly reflective of what Brad Lundell talked about with some students choosing to go homeschool or choosing another option this year because of the pandemic. We believe that that market share, if you will, of students that have left us will return back, depending upon, because one of the reasons that we looked into the online application for the academy that we spoke of at one of our last meetings was really in reference to, we want to provide all of the opportunities for our students so that we do bring them back to make them Owatonna Public School students. Because obviously there's a fiscal benefit with that, but there's also just the benefit of having them under our roof, whatever roof that might be to serve them, so.
Thank you. Any questions relative to what you saw in the enrollment report? Same would go for the item B, the school board policy revisions. That's Lori, Nikki, and Jolene that serve on that committee. And certainly would ask that any or all of them would speak to some of the things that you saw in your report.
Go ahead. Well, I think I can just speak briefly on this one. So there's more that are on the second reading later in the agenda, but on this one, essentially it was bringing our policy back in line with MSBA's proposed one. And Jeff, others, you guys can chime in. It's a fairly lengthy one. I really have to hand it to our staff because they did the heavy lifting to bring those all in line. And then there's an addendum that helps implement just a host, again, of details that our health services folks are surrounding every single day in every single building. So we're very grateful for their work, but it really was, that was the goal, I think.
Good. Thank you. Nikki,
Anything
Jolene,
else?
anything to add?
No, thank you for summarizing.
Looking around just to see if there's any other questions or comments on that. Anything to add?
No, I would agree with Ms. Weisenberger with, this is really trying to put, all along, we've tried to put practice and policy in alignment with one another, and certainly the addendum and the changes, that's a local piece we've added to make sure that we're meeting the policy requirements set forth by the School Board Association, but also then adding the pieces that have a little nuance with our school district. So how do we align that practice and policies?
Good, thank you. We're going to move on. Section 8 tonight would be discussion items only. First up would be board forum. I'm going to turn on this side. Eric, you have anything for board forum tonight?
Nothing at this moment.
Why don't I go this direction then? Jolene?
Facilities met today to discuss just new high school. They had a pre-bid meeting today that, what was it? 175?
Over 100, yeah.
Over 150 or 175 different individuals representing businesses that have looked at the plans logged into to hear about, which they were very, very excited about, because the higher the number of the people that are bidding, the sharper their pencil. And so, but right now things are still on time and on budget, so we're very excited. Yeah, Lori has a
Can I
question.
ask you a question? Just, so do they happen to mention, like, how many bids are there that will be awarded? Like, are there 25 and so there's 170 people looking, or are there
48 packages.
Okay.
And they didn't say specifically, but we're using best value for some of the larger packages to make sure that the price that they're giving is reflective of the quality of work they can do with the references and stuff like that. There's some of the packages that'll be public bid, lowest number wins, but
Okay.
48
48.
packages. Yes,
Wow.
which is huge.
Were any of these that have logged on local businesses?
They didn't specify if they were local, but I'm guessing that there are local businesses that just, they want the work because it's local and they want to be a part of it, and they're going to do their best to put their best number into it and hope to get the job.
Yeah, I'd really like to see a lot of people locally
Yep.
on this project.
Yeah.
If I might add one thing about this, when we look back to the way that we've done projects, there are two ways to accomplish large projects like this. One of them is through construction management. The other one is through basically a general contractor.
Right.
In the general contractor, you run into a case where whoever the subcontractors are for that general, they become who does the work. And with the construction management model that we're using, it allows more local companies to actually bid on the projects and sometimes even bid out sub-projects within a larger scope. So if a big electric company, if there wasn't one here that could take on that work, but they might be able to sub out some of the work locally to our workers. That was the entire goal. We want to have people that live in this community investing their time and resource into their high school. And or any project, but the high school particularly now. And so I think that was a real push for us to move away from the general contractor to stick with the construction management because it allowed us that option.
And then timing, can you remind us, just, is there a time frame for these?
Dirt
Package
moving in
bids?
June. It bids on the 9th of March Is that,
They're
or close to that timeframe?
Eric's got the dates right here.
Okay, go for it.
On that one.
Oh,
It's the 9th and the 24th.
Yep.
oh,
Yep, bids will be submitted on the 9th of March. And then because there are some that go through best value, there's a process that goes through their references and so on, make sure we're getting the best value for the dollar. And then that work will be awarded on, I think, March 24th was the date.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
makes sense.
The pushing of dirt
It's a big deal.
this summer.
Mhm.
Pretty exciting.
That's right.
Big deal.
Deborah, how are things going with reaching out and meeting people and
I met with Bob Olson and with Michelle Krell.
Good.
And yeah, I'm just feeling like I'm getting a little bit more of what's going on
Good.
and what to expect and what questions to ask and so getting there.
wonderful. Lori, anything to add?
So the policy committee did meet, as you know. I don't know, shall I speak a little bit to that? So we had, I think, and you guys can comment as well, but we had it was a great meeting, actually. We just kind of dug in. And in particular, the equity policy that we introduced and then we'll be looking at again later this evening. Just again, real healthy discussion. I think no new surprises, but just trying to figure out how to operationalize a policy. And I would just comment that I appreciated a great deal and correct me if I have the title wrong, this advisory group that speaks to equity issues in our district also gave us some ideas. But again, I think as a whole, we found them more operational than really policy ideas. But nonetheless, the conversation will continue, and that's the main point.
Vicki.
So I officially had my Minnesota School Board Association new person training. So learned all sorts of lovely new acronyms.
There are more?
There are more. There were a lot more. And so just kind of learning kind of where my role is as a new member. I will not officially be on any committees, but they invite us to sit in on various ones to kind of figure out where our interests lie. They talk specifically about the coffee and conversation. I'm sure all of you have seen them for our region, and encourage all school board members, if you have any questions or concerns, to attend those. It is School Board Recognition Week this week that they talked about. So thank you all as fellow board members. Our next Minnesota School Board meeting is on March 14th. And the National School Board meeting is April, what was it here? Of course, I don't have it right here. I think it was April 9th. And then in our March meeting, they're looking to invite Senators Smith and Klobuchar to, I guess, kind of discuss their platforms. So, again, learning experience, but I will keep you all updated as I learn new things.
Wonderful. Great. Tim, anything for board forum?
No.
Jolene?
No, just facilities.
Okay. Daniela?
I do not today.
The only thing that I would have for you tonight is, and we did a quick poll as each of you were coming in tonight. We will make it official. We'll meet Thursday morning, 7:15. It'll be a quick stand-up meeting. We'll put that on the calendar, and this gives us enough time to meet the 3-day threshold for making an announcement with regard to a meeting. It has essentially everything to do with the governor's meeting this past week with regard to kids back in school. And so Mr. Elstad will have a better sense of what that looks like at that point in time. Item B is the administrative report, and we would once again turn things over to Mr. Elstad for any thoughts, comments, observations.
Thank you, Mr. Sebring. That tees up this COVID update for you. First of all, just a run of the numbers. Our county case count last week was at 29.17 per 10,000. That is falling, and it will fall precipitously in the next report that you see come out this Thursday. We believe that the next report will get us down somewhere in the lower 20s. This is a critical factor that we sort of have forgotten because in the elementary world, the county case count isn't a big deal. For our secondary students and staff, though, if you were to get to 10 cases or below, You essentially then don't have to worry about social distancing in classrooms or cafeteria, and you don't have to do close contact investigations any longer because they feel like the spread is at such a low level of transmission within your county. So that will become something that will become. However, it's also to be said in the governor's new release last week that it is a factor, but it's not the factor that decides your learning model. But it is a helpful part when we look at some of the things that were unveiled within his package. So within that, we were asked to consider bringing our students from, remember now, there are a good portion of districts in the state that were in full distance learning yet, and so the governor's rollout last week was really asking by March 8th that every single district in the state at least be enrolled in some sort of in-person, like hybrid learning. Well, we've been doing hybrid learning here for quite a while. Our next step then, and what you'll be asked to consider on Thursday, well, really, how do we implement and bringing our students back in person? So I want to unveil a couple of things because I think it's important to know that it is not like flipping a switch where we can just say, yep, we're back on how we used to be. Because remember, we changed all of our systems to accommodate distance learning and hybrid learning. And so within that, there's a few things to consider. First of which is something you heard tonight. Student nutrition changes overnight for us. Because right now we're serving half of our students in the cafeteria. We have to maintain 3 feet of social distancing as per the new guidance. So we have to decide and we have to find a way to safely distance our students in the cafeteria to make sure that we're meeting that requirement. Furthermore, the social distancing then transfers itself to classrooms. We have some classrooms at the middle school and the high school that will have over 30 kids in them in attendance again. To try to find even 3 feet of distance between all of those desks will be a challenge. What we are telling our parents and community and our students and staff is that we are going to do our very, very best to try to find 3 feet of social distancing, which is what now has been the minimum required for us. In some cases, the Department of Health has given us a little reprieve to say, do your best. Try to find social distancing as best you can. So within that, that's another factor. The other one I think that sometimes is forgotten is staff availability. So we have 11 substitute teachers in our school district. And to think about the way close contact investigation goes now. So if we have, let's say we have 5 teachers in the district that are determined as a close contact because now they're in a classroom with more students. They have to quarantine for at least 7 days before they can come back on day number 8, as per the latest guidance from the Department of Health. Across our secondary, if that meant that we had 12 teachers gone for 7 days, that means we don't have enough substitutes to cover. So what we're trying to determine is, and the other factor I would add to that before I go further is, the CDC has determined that if a teacher or a person, I should say, has their full service of vaccinations, meaning they have their first and second dose accomplished, they no longer have to quarantine after close contact. That is a really critical thing for us to know because the closer we get toward vaccination, in fact, just this past weekend, if you read the Owatonna People's Press, you learned that just about over 60% of our staff have had their first dose. By the time we meet the end of March, 100% of our classroom teachers will have received their second dose. That's a critical part to keep our buildings and the available staff that we have in front of our students when we bring students back. A couple other things are transportation. We're going from half full buses to full buses again and trying to find the best way to socially distance on our buses. And while I fully recognize that there's a percentage of our high school students that don't have a need to ride the bus, our middle level students and our 9th graders in particular and some sophomores still ride the bus to school. And so we have to work through all of those. Long story short, there's a long list of implications here. And like I said, it's not as easy as flipping a switch. We have to make sure we're meeting all of those requirements, following the guidance from the Department of Health, making sure that we're still offering quality programs to our distance learners, which we sent out a survey last week, and many parents, it's probably the greatest response we've ever had to a survey put out by the school district. We have just over 1,500 responses as of just a...
Are you anticipating?
That's probably pretty close to 75% of our respondents, yeah.
Probably within an hour.
There were lots of interested people, I will say that. As of just before the board meeting, we had 83.2% of parents that chose the 4-day in-person model. And obviously the balance then, we're saying that the continuance with the hybrid would work for them. That tells us that our parents are eager to have students come back in. I've had some parents though ask about, what about going back to just a 5-day week? The part I want to add to that is we also, as part of Executive Order 20-82, we have to provide a distance learning option for any families that choose to take that option for a multitude of reasons, including the safety of themselves or family members or something like that. With that being there, it means our high school, middle school staff have to serve not only the students in front of them 4 days a week, they also have to serve all of the distance learners. And so we need a Wednesday. If we decide Wednesday is our distance learning day, we need that day for our teaching staff to connect with our distance learners, because one of the things we promise to our community is that the quality of instruction will not change based upon what model you've chosen. And for some students, distance learning works great. Other students, it doesn't work so well. So we're still mitigating and working through all of that. I want to make sure the Owatonna community understands you have a really willing staff. Our staff can't wait to get back into classrooms with students. They want to make sure that they're not going to be out a lot because they would be a close contact. That's a concern, and I absolutely understand that, because making sub-plans is like drudgery for teaching staff. They want to be with kids. They don't want to have substitutes there when they can help it. So again, lots of things happening here. On Thursday, as promised to our parents and community, I will have a full recommendation from my staff about how we approach this. We've contacted other school districts. We're trying to find out what the best practices are for them so we can start to identify, where do we fit into this mix? Where do we, is our thinking out of line? And we're working with the Department of Health. I make daily calls to the Department of Education and try to fit that all in as well. So on Thursday, we're going to release this. But as of Thursday, we'll have conquered, or at least gotten through most of those sort of implications I shared. Really long report to say, I am so excited. I am so excited to have students come back into our buildings again, and even if it's for 4 days. It just is heartwarming to me. It feels like the light at the end of the tunnel is getting brighter, and I'm Pollyanna just in general nature. But I would share with you that as I start to see those numbers drop in our county and across the state and maybe even the nation, I'm still reminded that COVID is dangerous, but I feel like we're turning a corner. And as your superintendent, I can't wait to just walk the hallways of the middle school and the high school again and see students like Daniela walking down the hallway and being a high school again, and bringing back some of the things we've so dearly missed, like concerts and prom and graduation. And on that note, I know that's a point that a lot of parents want to know about. Mr. Kath is meeting with a very important group of people to make that decision, our seniors. They are going to help to decide how prom and graduation go within the parameters that we've been given, because it's their event. We're just lucky enough to get to be there with them for those events. So that's a really long-winded report about COVID. I would stand for any questions that board members or Daniela certainly have about kind of where we're at and where we're headed and when that information will be coming out.
While you're queuing up the questions, I'll ask Michelle to come back in, because there's one quick thing I would ask Michelle to address. Any questions for Mr. Elstad on this? And I guess I would implore you, to the extent that parents reach out to you, there's questions that you have, please, between now and Thursday morning, reach out to Mr. Elstad on all this. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, good, thanks. Hey, Michelle, thanks a lot for coming back in. And there was a good article that ran this week that talked about how summer school is changing. For lack of a better way of putting it, it's a little bit more robust to try and help these students that need the boost up. And it was a
pretty robust summer school program already with, we have Minds at Work, which is our summer school program, which is K-8. We have kinder camp, K-camp, and we have migrant ed that we have for 6 weeks, as well as our ESY for our special education students. And so we have those programs already, as well as credit recovery for students that might need to gain some credit recovery. But we're really looking at and hoping, with additional funding from the legislature and the governor, that we would be able to provide some more robust programming. So we're extending programming and working with community education and Deb McDermott Johnson to really identify what are some programs that we could offer for students that could be considered enrichment programs, but really focused around academics. And so some of the ideas, we've spent some time with different groups just kind of brainstorming some of the ideas that we might be able to hopefully offer if there's a funding source that comes, because we really don't want funding to be a barrier. Right now, we offer community education courses. Those courses are a fee-based system, very reasonable for families, but still a fee-based system. So if there's a way for us to be able to provide summer school programming for them at no cost, that's really our goal. So we're looking at, could we do book clubs with students, looking at even math camps, running camps for a week or two, or the month of June, or things like that. Right now, we currently do a STEAM camp with our middle school students as part of our Achievement Integration Grant, and that's the integration that we do with Can You Wanna Mingo. And so we're hoping to continue that, but what if we were to offer an elementary STEAM camp? We've even talked about the importance of, is there a way for us to even, and I know we have some projects going on at our building, so this may not be feasible, but it would be great if we could offer some neighborhood kinds of, like at neighborhood schools, here are some fun classes that maybe could be taken for a morning or an all-day event or things like that. So we really tried to get really creative. We've even talked about the potential of having people propose ideas so that we can get students continuing to engage in school throughout the summer. We recognize that learning loss does happen typically in the summer because kids tend to revert back because they're having fun playing and not really worried about school and reading and math and things like that. So really looking at how could we continue to help students learn and grow, and not that they're qualifying for a program, but maybe they're interest-based programs. So we have a lot of great ideas. I think the funding is really what we're, really banks on, being able to make sure that we can exciting opportunities that we could provide.
Really neat. Any questions?
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks.
I have one other item for the board, if I might. As Nikki Giesecke talked about, this is Minnesota School Board Recognition Week. All of you will see your picture along with a post on social media all week long. We are appreciative of your work, but I have a resolution I'd like to read. Whereas the Owatonna Public Schools staff and students recognize the importance of publication in our community, and whereas the Owatonna Public Schools staff and students appreciates the vital role played by those individuals who, as local school board members, establish policies to ensure an efficient, effective school system. And whereas school board members serve as a voice that enables our community to preserve local management and control of our public schools, and whereas school board members are charged with representing our local education interests to state and federal governments and ensuring compliance with state and federal laws, and whereas school board members selflessly devote their knowledge, time, and talents as advocates for our children. Whereas local school board members are strong advocates for public education and responsible for communicating the needs of the school district to the public and the public's expectations to the district. Now therefore be it resolved that the Owatonna Public Schools staff and students recognize and salute the members of the ISD 761 School Board by proclaiming February 22nd through 26th of 2021 as School Board Recognition Week. Thank you very much for your selfless work in being school board members and helping to lead our children. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. With that, we will move on to item 9, which is our consent agenda. Does anybody have any reason to believe that we need to pull one of these items out? I'm looking around and I don't see anybody saying anything. So the quick reminder here is we are approving then the minutes from January 25th and February 8th, as well as the disbursement and personnel reports. We'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yep. Jolene,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
Deborah,
Aye.
and I myself, and I, 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 10 tonight, board action requested. The first item would be a 2021-2022 school calendar revision. I'll turn it over to Mr. Elstad.
As we look at next year's school calendar, we did request and made a few changes to just end of quarter dates and things of that nature. So what you are being asked to consider approval for tonight is the finalized calendar for the 2021-2022 calendar, provided that we are able to enter into a school district or enter into a school year in a quote-unquote normal way.
Any questions for Mr. Elstad on this? Okay, hearing none, I'll move that the board approve the revision to the 2021-2022 calendar, moving the end of quarter 1 to November 4 and the end of quarter 2 to January 20. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor with an aye? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Item B, 2020-2021 final budget. Mr. Elstad.
Yes, and I think Amanda Heilman is here as well, and so I would ask her to come and join us if there are any questions. Amanda and Sarah Cramblett at one of our last meetings, thank you, look at that, right upon entry, did present a final budget that was recommended that for consideration for your approval by the Board Finance Committee. And at this point, I would open it up to questions of board members to Ms. Heilman if you have those questions.
Any questions? We had a very comprehensive report on this at our work session earlier. I don't hear any questions. Amanda stuck around for that.
That's fine. You want us to ask you a quick question?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Sarah was kind enough to spell out all of the motions for us. I'll move that the board approve the 2020-2021 final budget as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Item C is a resolution directing the administration. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
As per the final budget that you heard, we will be making reductions this year. And so this is a resolution that you are asked to consider approving that allows the superintendent and or other designees to make suggested or recommended reductions to programs upon which you will have final approval of those reductions. But again, we have typically done this at this time each year that we're having to consider unfortunate reductions for staff. So again, I would stand for any questions you might have regarding this resolution.
Jeff, just a clarification, so the budget doesn't anticipate this?
Yes. Yeah, we're still working through. There is a couple of big factors that I would add to this. One of them, Mr. Lundell indicated about what part of revenue might be coming to us from the legislature for the next biennium that plays a big role. The other thing would be is the federal bill that's now coming in, I think, the end of this week, that it's going to be put through the House, which is that $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. There are pieces within that for public schools again. So again, that can be some factors. So we're still finalizing those numbers, but we know for a fact there will be reductions.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I will move that the board approve the resolution directing the administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs and positions and reasons therefore.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Eric, it's a roll call.
Jolene?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
I myself is an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, school board policy revisions, that which we had taken up at our last meeting, as well as an opportunity to ask more about tonight. Any further questions with regard to these policy changes?
I had a question about the curriculum and textbooks. How do you currently decide on your textbooks and what you're going to cover per class? And
So we have Look, at Michelle opening the door too. She's probably coming in here. She can spell it out. I'll give you kind of the 30,000-foot view.
You guys are good. Really good.
Deborah, and then Michelle will give you any other detail around it. Michelle and her staff put together a team of teachers that really vets out all of our curriculum. A lot of it, though, comes from whatever is mandated by the state that we are inserting within our curricula in a district. And then it's really up to us to identify the resources that might be needed to make sure that we're delivering what the state has asked us to do. So I'm going to stop there before I get any deeper,
I think you
Michelle.
covered it. I do. Yes. But yeah, exactly. So the Minnesota Department of Education has academic standards in each of the core content areas. And those academic standards are things that we need to follow as a district. So that really is our curriculum. And then we choose resources that align with and meet those standards. And so a resource might not cover all of the standards and we need to supplement it, but we have processes in place. So we have something called the District Curriculum Advisory Committee, and that team meets, Mark and Tim are on that team. We meet monthly, and we have a curriculum review cycle that's aligned with the academic standards and when they're revised at the state level. And then based on that, we spend about 3 years. We usually have a lead time with the Minnesota Department of Education. So we have about 3 years to be able to take those courses and really identify maybe a resource. And then we have curriculum time where teachers come together as teams of teachers. They take the academic standards. They identify what they believe is critical to be taught within those standards, and then if there's a resource necessary or if there's something that we'll be utilizing. Certainly with our new online, being more online and our access to devices for students, the days of textbooks it will be very slim that we would be buying some textbooks. We would be probably buying more online resources to be able to supplement the work that staff are doing with students.
Deborah, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
And certainly if you have other questions, Deborah, I'm happy we can talk more about it too.
Any other thoughts, comments on this topic? Hearing none, I'll ask Lori if you would kindly introduce the motion.
Sure. I move that the board adopt policies 110, equity and diversity, and 534, unpaid meal charges, and approve the revisions to policy 419, 601, and 602 as listed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor with an aye? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. We're on to item E, gifts to the district. I'll turn things over to Mr. Elstad.
Once again, as I say each month, I'm always overwhelmed by the generosity of our community and what they give to our district. I'll call out a couple that are of interest. We received a check from the Independent School District 761 Foundation in the amount of $50,000. That is part of their first installment for the foundation room at the new high school building. It's going to be a fantastic space that our community will enjoy for years and years and years and use frequently. I would also let you know the Mayo Clinic Health System is an ongoing commitment toward our new high school to really update the athletic facilities, including the training room that TC, our Terry Carlisle, our current athletic trainer, uses to make sure that it's up to date and certainly state of the art, so that our students have access to the best sort of athletic training care that they can get if there's an injury or something like that. And again, some other anonymous donations. We're coming into Clay Target team time, which is great because we have a number of donations that have come in to help support the Clay Target team as we move forward. And one that I would also call out is we just have people that generally, so the Hess family has given a $500 replacement of lost or damaged library books. To make sure that we're able to do that, because we do have lost or damaged library books at every building every year. Mm-hmm. But those are just some of the things that people recognize as a need and give of themselves and their resources to help us. And I can't tell you how much we appreciate the support of our community in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Be kind enough to introduce this final motion for us.
I move to approve the gifts to the district as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Eric, if you would.
Yep. Jolene?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
I myself is an aye. 7-0 pass.
Motion carries. Thank you. Before we adjourn, thank you for the nice resolution.
Yeah.
On behalf of the board, thanks. That's nice.
Well, it's a selfless job, and being a school board member is not easy work, and you have decisions that we have yet in front of us to make and difficult decisions. I appreciate your support as a superintendent because a superintendent is only as effective as the board that they work with. So thank you.
We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor with an aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, folks. Great meeting tonight.